Hello and welcome back to TNWKS, the Now We Know show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest, and by the end we will have learned something new, and hopefully you will too. I'm Zach.
I'm Buzz, and this week we've got our very special guest, Tina Holland, who is our big cat specialist, because this week we're talking about the wild cats of Great Britain, but we're not talking about indigenous wild cats. We're talking about things like the Beast of Bodmin Moor and the big cats that are supposedly roaming Britain right now. Well, it's great to be back in the studio. We're a little bit sort of like cramped in today because we've decided that it's so hot down in the dungeon studio.
Yes.
That because summer is still here in the UK.
Surprisingly, yes.
Who would have thought it? That we're back up in the tower studio, which is about the coolest studio we've got at the moment. Anyway, so back here we are with our special guest talking about the big cats. But before we get to that, do you know, sometimes you feel a little bit tired doing the podcast.
Yeah, I need a bit of a pep up.
A little bit of caffeine, and that's when it comes in. It's really handy if you guys out there
buy us a coffee.
Yes,
please buy us a coffee. That would be absolutely fantastic. It really supports the channel and helps us make more stuff for you.
Yeah, more content. So, Tina, if you fancy, you can buy us a coffee.
Yeah,
there you go. Sounds a plan.
There we are.
Anyway, right. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this week's podcast, it is time for
the classic segment of the Now We Know show podcast.
Of
Weird and Wonderful.
There we go. So they are brought in this week's Weird and Wonderful. Okay. Let's. I've been having to do a bit of sort of digging around this week because there haven't been that many weird and wonderful stories that I could find. Anyway, you'll like this one because everybody likes a Greggs. And Greggs fans have been left divided after hearing the spooky tales from inside a haunted bakery in the northeast.
Wait, a haunted bakery?
Yes, traditionally this haven for fans craving the classic sausage roll or hearty steak bake. You had one of those this morning. But the Furwell branch in Sea Road, Sutherland has a very different twist. Customers believe the fast food joint of Greggs has a supernatural side.
Hang on, so is this haunting, is it like an old baker, or is it like a devilish sausage roll or something?
I have no. Well, let's read on.
Is it the pig's revenge?
Let's read on. Social media users have been whispering about a ghostly presence at the Greggs since 2004.
Ooh.
Back then, employees spoke of bizarre happenings, from kettles boiling of their own accord and eerie sounds in the staff area. There we go. And it would transpire that there's also an old lady that her spirit haunts this particular Greggs because the staff members have said about that they can smell lavender.
That's an odd smell for a Greggs.
Exactly. And so the employees speculate that perhaps she was an old resident before it turned into a Greggs.
There we are.
A haunted Greggs.
I didn't expect to hear that one. I thought it was going to be a story about that breakdancer in the Olympics.
Oh, the Australia one. Oh, she was classic. And I mean, that's great. I mean, okay, I like the Olympics. I think the Olympics is fantastic, and I love the where its origins are in history. The Olympic Games of ancient Greece, with throwing javelins and discus and marathons. That's where we get the term marathon from and everything. Breakdancing, is it really an Olympic sport? I think the Australian girl did us a favour by doing the most funniest routine out there.
But anyway, maybe we should move on to our special guest.
So that was weird and wonderful.
Yeah.
But let's bring in Tina now. So this week, Tina, we are talking about big cats. It's a subject that we've talked about actually, and we are covering in the Cryptid Adventurers.
Yes.
Which is
a new side to the Zak Wylde Productions channel.
Yeah. Well,
so look forward to that.
That's where we
Stay tuned.
We investigate all things cryptid
and paranormal.
So that's something
supernatural.
So if you haven't checked it out, that'll be coming soon. And because of that, there have been recently more sightings. So we thought we'd bring you in and talk about this, Tina. So okay, let's go right off the cuff here. Do big exotic cats roam the countryside in Great Britain?
Well, there's the thing. I think that historically there have been discussions of big black dogs going back centuries.
Black Shuck, for example. There is a Black Shuck festival.
Yeah.
And I believe that may have actually just been held over the past weekend.
Yeah, I think we found out about it as soon as it was just about to happen, so we couldn't suddenly change our plans to then go to it.
I think we're going to visit that probably next year. But the Black Shuck, or the Black Big Devil Dogs, have been part of English folklore for hundreds of years.
Exactly, yes.
And the Black Shuck Festival, supposedly on a very stormy night, Black Shuck tried to get into a church, and you can go to one of these churches and actually see the claw marks where because he was like a fiery hound, actually scorched into the front door of the church.
Very cool.
Or all the
It'd be very fun to actually see that firsthand.
And all the parishioners inside were in terror of this giant dog. So, do you think that the giant dogs therefore have something to do with these sightings of big black cats? Then?
Well, the thing is, when you look back historically, there's always been this idea of, the black devil dog and things like that. But when you look into as much evidence as you can possibly come up with, it perhaps suggests that perhaps the black dog is in fact a black cat.
Okay.
All right.
Because
so what type of black cat would that be? We're not talking domestic.
No, we're not talking domestic cat.
Yeah, I mean, it just have to be a very fat cat, wouldn't it?
Well, we've got a couple of those.
But then they obviously, in all these reports and things, they're things that are very fast, very agile creatures. Yeah, it's not going to be a very fat Kira, for instance.
No, they are described as being large exotic cats.
Yeah.
It's to do with the fact that they're on many occasions there have been there's unusual evidence of things like sheep, foals, and other animals like foxes and badgers being eaten, but it's the way that the remains are found.
Okay.
So often for example, photographs I've seen have shown kind of claw marks on the hindquarters of, say, horses and things like that.
Right. So they've been attacked from behind. Yeah.
They've been, if you could imagine a big cat kind of jumping.
So would you say that these carcasses that have been found, were they eaten?
Usually,
or just attacked and killed?
There is usually a big bite to the neck.
That would indicate a feline, so a cat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
or some other creature, maybe.
Or some other creature.
Werewolf.
There's that.
The neck is sometimes broken.
Okay.
But usually, it's either kind of instantly, broken, or perhaps something has been hanging on the neck.
Well, that's how.
And kind of like suffocating the animal down.
That's how I assume that big cats take down their prey.
And then the insides are eaten first.
Okay, that's atypical of a cat, is
it? It seems to be typical of a cat, yes.
So that's interesting, because you're saying that these animals were obviously eaten, whereas we brought up the black shuck, which is a more of a kind of supernatural kind of creature, or that's how it's perceived. Would you say that the big cats, or the stories of big cats in the UK, are similarly supernatural? Because in my mind, nothing is really popping into my brain about a kind of a supernatural big cat.
Well, I would say not. I think the thing is, if you go back, I can't be exactly specific on the exact, years, but if you go back hundreds of years and things, you will see, for example, you've got the Scottish wildcat, but genetically it is very closely related to the European wildcat. And the Scottish wildcat is in fact not an awful lot bigger than your moggy. It's got a wider kind of head, and it's got very specific markings on its tail and its body. But it is very genetically...
But that's an indigenous cat.
That is an indigenous cat, but because of where it has lived all these years, at one point, if you like, you would have had the Scottish wildcats and the European cats roaming.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, when we had the Ice Age and things like that, Britain got cut off from
That's
Europe.
Yep.
So the local area would have had, over the years, factors that have changed the way that that animal has developed. So they're closely related, but not exactly the same.
Right. So,
for example.
Okay. So how would that be that we could have larger wild cats such as pumas, panthers, lynx, and things in the UK for maybe hundreds of years without actually people getting more evidence or just accepting them as being a part of the landscape as we do things like foxes and badgers? Why are they so elusive?
I think I would like to split this into two parts. You have got the elements that would or could maybe suggest that we may have cats that have developed over the years in the UK.
Okay, what is this, naturally, or have they
yes, naturally
been imported into the UK and then
no?
spread
So let's talk ancient.
Okay.
So historically, there could be information to indicate that we have had or have or continued to have perhaps populations of some cats in the UK.
Okay.
All right. But then if I could then draw a line and say, then let's look more recently at, let's say, the year 1976.
Okay, what's
or actually, let's go back to, say, the 60s.
Okay.
In the 1960s and 70s, it became quite fashionable to have exotic pets, and they could come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. It could be snakes, it could be cats, it could be unusual things like capybara. That's
They've
the
had capybara in the UK.
Have
they?
I actually believe that it was the case that you could go to Harrods in London back in the 60s and buy exotic animals.
Oh, wow.
Because it wasn't against the law.
Well, I hadn't really considered that.
So there lots of people did actually have some very, very wild, large animals.
Okay.
All right, so while we're on that then,
Yep.
so I would like to have a discussion about the animals of old, but as we're talking about Harrods and such like, they even had shows in Harrods with exotic pets. In fact, I have a book here from Brian Blessed, which was absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
And there was a discussion in that book about a gentleman who was
What's the name of that book?
This is called The Panther in My Kitchen, My Wildlife with Animals.
Right.
That was
Good old Brian
very...
Blessed.
I'm Brian Blessed. Hawkman dive.
Gordon's alive.
Flying blind on a rocket cycle.
Oh, we just had to get something there. Good old Brian.
So this was a really good read. I really, really enjoyed this. So he used to visit Harrods, and in fact, actually, talking of Harrods, that is part of what led him on a journey with wild animals.
Right.
And there was a gentleman who used to visit Harrods that had snakes, and there used to be showings of these snakes in the afternoon.
Okay.
And Brian Blessed used to go and visit this gentleman with the snakes, and as time went on, they ended up becoming friends, and then that led on to Brian actually helping rescue various animals and things like wild cats after the Dangerous Animals Act was introduced in 1976.
Yes, I think I've heard of that.
So it became illegal for you to own a dangerous animal in 1976 without having a license.
However, would I be right in thinking that although it was illegal to own an exotic animal
without a license,
that if you set one free, there was no law against it?
Well, what actually happened was in 1976, the Dangerous Wild Animals Act was introduced. It also included, flora and fauna as well, but we're not talking about that. So what happened is you had to either license your pet,
Yep.
put it to sleep,
Oh,
send it back.
send it back.
I
I
guess.
want to return this to Harrods.
Return it.
I'm not pleased, you know.
I'm not pleased. Yes, it doesn't come up to the standards. I've got my.
It's not house trained.
I
It keeps
get.
eating my gardeners.
Yes, yes.
I guess. All
Please,
right.
have this tiger back.
I may not have it exactly right, but it's my understanding perhaps they had to be kind of rehomed back from whence they came.
I would assume that caused probably a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the animal could be given to, say, a wildlife park or zoo.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking that they don't have an unlimited amount of space. Therefore, I'm sure there must have been.
They got overrun.
Yes, I was going to say there must have been a situation where you suddenly had a lot of owners who perhaps didn't want to have to go through the cross all the T's and dot all the I's to get a license for their pets, and if they couldn't rehome them and they couldn't face actually having their pet put to sleep, then as I say,
it should be
possibly
noted.
ushered them off. Go, run free.
It should be noted.
Yep.
That it wasn't until 1981.
Yep.
So this is basically about 5 years later, that a law was introduced which prevented you releasing exotic animals.
That's what I was going to say.
So you've got this 5-year period of time
where if you release them, you wouldn't get.
You couldn't own it.
You couldn't own it, but you couldn't get in trouble for releasing it.
But you couldn't get in trouble for releasing it.
Right.
And if you didn't want to put your animal to sleep, because that's what people were facing as owners.
Yeah.
So the zoo can't have it because it's overrun. None of the zoos can have them because they've just got no more space.
Yep.
Or they're not good enough, perhaps. For captive breeding programs and things like that.
Yep. Carry on. Yep.
And then, so you've got this 5-year period of time where you couldn't get in trouble for releasing them.
Yep.
And even when in 1981 the law changed that prevented that, it wasn't very strongly enforced.
Well, I suppose it's like most laws, when they say we're bringing out a law to stop people doing such and such, but then you've got to have the people to enforce it.
Or you haven't got the manpower even nowadays with laws and things.
So the argument could be if an animal was released deliberately. See, there's two different things here. There's released or escaped. So if an animal escaped, you didn't release it.
Right. So
but if you deliberately left the door open, then you were being irresponsible.
Right. Okay.
So it's a very
it's kind of like a line almost.
I mean, do you know if anybody ever got charged with that kind of thing or not?
Actually, I don't.
Well,
actually, I don't.
There you go.
So
what you're saying is because diving back historically, personally, I feel like to have a breeding colony of large wildcats in the British Isles over hundreds of years, I think they would have basically pretty much been exterminated because we killed off all the bears, we killed off all the wolves, we killed off all these things.
Beavers.
Yeah.
And there's when we go back to, for example, another interesting book, Tracking the Highland Tiger. So this discusses the Scottish wildcat.
Who's that by?
This is by Miriam Taylor.
Okay.
So it's a Bloomsbury book. That was quite an interesting read as well. But there are accounts when you look at, a real cat that was all over the place in the UK, the Scottish wildcat. But there are accounts on these big Highland estates, even going back to the 1800s, where the gamekeeper is recorded having shot 400 of them in just a season.
Well, I think with something...
So they have...
You don't expect to hear stories like that, do you?
No, I mean, you could kind of easily expect that if they were talking about rabbits or something,
Yeah, but this is a season, and this is just, say, one estate. We're not just talking one estate. We're talking it was commonplace.
Yeah.
That they would... Because the Scottish wildcats, of course, hunt.
Yeah.
And, of course, when we think about the precious game birds and things like that...
Well, gamekeepers... there's a clue in the name, and farmers who protect their stock. That's why it's just been from year dot. They always take out their vengeance on things like wolves and foxes and anything that's going to harm their living. What they make their own money and off is always going to be the enemy, and they're going to want to shoot it. So to shoot that many wild cats, however,
so to coin a phrase, an animal that is not protected,
it's fair game.
Is fair game.
That's right. So,
and of course, if an animal isn't indigenous to the UK, it unfortunately could be argued it's fair game. An animal is not protected until it's protected.
Yeah, but my point was the big cats. If we had big wild cats like mountain lions and things, we had back in when the UK was the Great Wild Wood, we had aurochs, which is a big wild oxen, and we had also bears.
Bison.
In Scotland, when you had the Ice Age came down, they have found bones of polar bears in caves in Scotland. So polar bears obviously used to roam around. They dredge up from the North Sea mammoth tusks, because obviously we were connected to the continent, and when that was known as Doggerland, when it wasn't flooded with the North Sea, we had herds of mammoths and all sorts. So these things would have been around. But as I say, as the UK becomes an island and the Great Wild Wood is being chopped down and the populace is growing, and we kill all the bears, we kill all the wolves, we do all this land clearing for farming, and the farmers will shoot the wildcats, like you said, the gamekeepers will do that. To have now a cat population that has survived that onslaught, I think very, very, very unlikely.
Yeah, it's incredibly unlikely.
I think if we've got any big wild cats in the wild in the UK, then it's got to come from what you said, Tina, about the Exotic Animals Act back in '76. I'd even say
there's more than that, though. There's more.
I'd even say, if it wasn't an indigenous cat, remember we had a period of time when the Roman Empire controlled Britain up to Hadrian's Wall. They had their small, amphitheatres, or where they used to do gladiatorial combat. And obviously they would probably, during the period of the Roman Empire, would have brought exotic animals into the UK. So I'd even go to say they could easily have become loose and to have roamed around, but I still think it would be very, very hard for any group of animals to have survived from that period as a kind of free roaming breeding
population.
Okay, so to discuss the genus Panthera.
Okay, which means
basically big cats.
Big cats. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So
now you know, show.
No, where's our hooter? We haven't got the hooter yet.
It's ordered, okay? I've ordered the hooter for those random factoids, and it's on its way.
That was a good factoid. That was. What was that again, Tina? The genus
Panthera.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Means big cats.
Big cats.
Big cats. So there are lots of big cats. So
are you talking around the world? Or
okay, all over the world. There's all sorts of cats. I mean, I do not know all the big cats, but let's just think. We've got
tigers,
lions,
panthers, cheetahs, leopards,
cougars,
pumas, lynx, mountain lions.
Incidentally, so your puma,
snow leopards,
your puma, your mountain lion, and your cougar are
cougar
are kind of the same. Kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Oh, lynx! You haven't.
I think
he said lynx.
Right. Yeah. So there are lots of cats.
Yes.
And whilst I would not expect a great big lion to mate with a domestic cat,
that would be.
Don't put that image in our listeners' heads.
Okay.
Oh no!
Or the opposite way.
You do on occasion.
Yes.
You do on occasion get
crossbreeds.
Hybrid.
Yeah, hybrids, like a liger.
A liger and such like. So usually.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ever see a liger, you think of tigers being bigger ligers. I've seen a white liger that is just gigantic. So crazy.
How big?
Oh, it's big.
Big. Really, really big.
Bigger than a big thing on a big day.
That's quite big.
That's quite big.
Okay, so when you get a hybrid cat,
Yes.
I would expect that the male hybrid
Yep.
would be sterile.
Is that always the case?
I wouldn't say it's always the case, but
Makes me want to say, nature finds a way. Yeah.
Strong
Life.
possibility.
Oh, life
Finds a way.
Yeah.
Strong probability. However,
Jurassic Park quote. Sorry.
however, when we go back to the Scottish wildcat,
Yep.
they generally aren't. Right. So right.
They generally
Okay.
aren't.
Right. Hang on. Right. When you go back to the Scottish wildcat,
Yep.
so a pure Scottish wildcat would mix with the Scottish wildcat. However, hybrids have occurred, and the hybrid population has had a massive
crossbred with moggies, basically.
crossbred with moggies. Now there are two sides to this. One is the, if you like, a hybrid between the two.
Okay.
But those male hybrids haven't necessarily become sterile.
Right. So
There is a little side tangent which also should be mentioned here, which is called the Kellis cat,
okay.
which is a hybrid between
The Kellis cat is a
which is-
cowardly cat.
which is a black cat, which is cross between
Scrooge the musical. Carry on.
which is a cross between
Yep.
a Scottish wildcat and a domestic cat, and is black.
It's called a Kellis cat.
It's called a
And
Kellis cat,
And it's completely black, is it?
completely black as far as I'm aware.
Oh, right. So they actually have given it its own hybrid.
It's
name.
actually got its own hybrid name, so you can, and that, as far as I know,
They can breed.
can breed.
So that would say that in certain circumstances,
Nature finds a way,
nature
as you
finds a
said.
way. Hey.
Hey.
So it is quite interesting. So I think when you come back to the big cats, you have got either cats, let's say before the Dangerous Animal Act,
Yep.
Mhm.
which there could be something we don't know about yet,
Right.
possibly.
Oh, allude to that. What do you mean? So a species of cat in the UK that we don't know about. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, there could.
Well,
There,
Could-
it's a. I mean, it sounds highly unlikely, but could there be?
We did do a podcast on the Beast of Bonbury Moor, didn't we?
We did
And I
that
was
with
just
Sarah.
trying to think, when did that particular legend, that hit in the 60s, didn't it? Was that the 60s or the
Oh,
50s?
blimey.
I'm trying to rack my brain on the Beast of Bonbury Moor. But of course, that was all about a large cat, wasn't it?
Mhm.
It
But
was.
if there was something there in the 60s, I very much...
All right, so that one's no,
Okay.
that's Exmoor. That one.
Okay, the Beast of Exmoor.
Right.
Do you want to show the camera that?
Yep.
There you go. And for those people that are tuning in, it's a book, another book called
Yes.
The Beast of Exmoor by...
A lady called Di Francis, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. And as far as I'm aware, you have a bit of a job to try and find this one.
Okay.
It is fascinating.
Oh, really? It's a really good
It
book.
is a really, really
So you
fascinating
heard it here first.
book.
If you
There
get
you
your hands
go,
on that one.
listeners.
So the lady Di Francis has actually wrote a number of books,
Okay.
including one that is about her own Kellis cats that she's bred,
Right.
or I think she found some
wow.
or something. So
Okay.
that's quite interesting.
So to the subject in question, big cats roaming the Britain. Why is it that we get reports that people see big cats, black cats? I think there might be some variations in the colour. A bit like talking about Bigfoot, really, because we
Yeah,
get all sorts of colours.
these conversations often like cross over, don't they? Especially when you're looking at the cryptozoology stuff.
Yeah.
Big cats are always kind of in there somewhere
Yeah.
as like a more plausible thing that could
B.
Okay.
be.
Yeah,
When we come back to the Beast of Exmoor, for example,
Yeah.
there were reports of black cats.
Uh-huh.
There was also reports of sandy-coloured cats.
Okay.
And some of these, there's lots of reports. And some of the people doing the reporting are policemen.
Mhm.
There was even the commandos were pulled in to try and deal with this situation, which I'm not going to say anything more about, because that's worth a read
Okay.
if you can find it. So nobody has, certainly for this area, for the Exmoor, the Beast of Exmoor,
Yeah.
has been able to be certain what cat it is, because the characteristics don't seem to quite add up, and the stories from different people don't quite match up. Although there's things that are similar, there's also things that are not similar.
So does this
go
back to what you were saying about
the hybridization, possibly?
Right.
So we could have something that we haven't seen before.
No, that's interesting.
And it takes 4 or 5 generations for maybe that hybridization to stop the male cat being sterile.
Right. So, as I to come back to what I was saying, if these sightings was being seen in the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s, people weren't carrying around mobile phones with them. They weren't literally these days you only have to have somebody outside a club having a bit of an argy-bargy on a Saturday night, and you've got 200 people pulling their phones out of their pockets. A video.
Yeah.
So why is it that when it comes to, like with most cryptozoology, we've not seen conclusive photographs, video, or even tracks of said large cats?
Or have we?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
All right, so, okay, let's just talking about the Beast of Exmoor. So the Beast of Exmoor, we had the Dangerous Animals Act of 1976.
Yep.
The commandos, I think, were called out in 1983. They were called out just after the Falklands War.
Okay, so
to deal with the situation.
What was the situation?
Well, lots and lots of attacks were happening.
Oh, these are human beings?
No, on sheep.
On sheep. Oh, livestock.
Livestock. We're talking. The farmers were at their wits' end. Okay. They're literally having these attacks.
Losing that many livestock.
They were I think it might have been about 50 in. I'm not sure if it was a month or 2 months. And literally, you've got farmers watching over their flocks, and it's literally happening under their noses, without any of the sheep getting scared.
Oh, we got a predator.
Well, perhaps
a sheep predator.
Perhaps that kind of alludes more to like some form of chupacabra or something.
A goat sucker.
Yeah, like you have that in the America.
Yeah, South America. Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe we're looking at some kind of UK chupacabra thing
so
here.
What are you talking about? Something more supernatural?
I mean potential.
Like
this is all potential.
Beast that's coming out. I have to approach all these things just like we do in the Cryptid Adventurers. We have to approach them from a scientific and analytic, practical approach. You know, in the UK, you know, I've tracked animals for years. I've photographed and followed animals in the wild for years. So far, I've not come across any evidence myself of these big cats. Probably the nearest I would say to anything is to see the odd deer carcass which is hung. Yeah,
that's not really a natural thing, is it?
You don't get dead deer jumping up into bushes.
No.
But saying that, the bushes that these deer carcasses were hung in would not be strong enough or sufficient enough for even a normal sized cat to have climbed up it. The branches are too thin. So I still put it down to that's somebody, a human being out, like a gamekeeper or somebody shooting, and then maybe field stripping a deer there and then, and then putting the skeleton, the carcass, just up into a bush. Yeah,
potentially. So outside interference.
Yeah,
could be a thing here. But
saying that, I personally do feel, from the evidence that is presented, even though I've got to kind of like I've got to come from both sides of of this. I still find it odd that we haven't got any conclusive video evidence. You know, because again, even around urban areas or even traffic cameras, there's so many cameras in the UK.
Yeah.
That cover lots of different areas. That and people with their mobile phones, as I've said, that you're not getting any good quality video footage. It always seems to be so distant, and then of course because it's distant, the camera's wobbling around,
wobbly, shaky,
and you've got
we are literally living in the age of technology, and cameras and things are so good now. Why is it that any found footage, photos, why is it always of a lower quality?
But I would say I still tend to believe I feel there is more of a possibility that we do have big cats than that we don't.
Right.
I just feel you've got to look at big cats in general and say either you've got cats which, as you did quite rightly, Tina, they might be hybridized. You might get two different exotic species that have met and managed to breed. Yeah.
Which would explain why there is difficulty in
defining.
So, for example, there was a skull that was found in Wales.
Yeah.
And this particular skull was given to a number of professionals, actually by this lady, Di Francis, who wrote this book. And these were different professionals around the world. I think 3 of them came up with the idea it was a leopard.
Yeah.
And one of them said it was a juvenile lion.
Okay.
Now,
but what's interesting in that is it's a cat. It's a feline.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what you're not saying is that it was something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was very definitively.
That was definitively, it's a big cat skull.
So big cats have been found.
It's not the first one, but I think the thing is, I think the sad thing is, it's probably unless you actually get a dead one, they're not going to believe you. Because, for example, another skull that was found that was down Dartmoor way was on the side of one of the main roads, the A30 or something like that. But could it have been put there by somebody?
Well,
they just found the skull. They didn't find anything else. They just found the skull.
Kind of random thing that somebody would be driving along the road and then lob a
cat
skull out the window.
No, but so the sad thing is, unless you've actually got a body.
Well, they say that about things like Bigfoot, etc. Yeah, unless you've got a body to prove. Yeah. But this is kind of
but the animal can't be protected.
Yeah.
Until until it's deemed it is definitely there. Do you understand what I mean?
I know there has been some murmurings of the reintroduction of things like the lynx, for example, because the lynx is very elusive, stays away from humans, and to be totally honest with you, we have got a massive deer population with the different breeds of deer that we've got in the UK, which exponentially grows. You see them being hit by cars all the time because we have so many. I mean, that's exactly reflects what you were saying, Tina. You see deer, you see badgers, you see foxes being hit all the time by cars. You'd think a big cat, maybe. But to finish, the fact is we have this huge deer population, and it's usually human hunters and gamekeepers that try to cull and keep that population down. So the idea of introducing the lynx as a natural predator would be doing the job naturally, and keep a balance through nature. Of course, you get people that say, "Oh, now I'm scared because I'm worried that my little Tommy's going to be playing in the garden and he's going to suddenly get attacked by a lynx." Well, this was where I was going with this. When you get, for example, myself, when I want to go and video otters, I can put cameras out, and I can put cameras out for weeks on end and get nothing. And then I'm lucky enough to get, say, a mating pair of otters come, and they usually really enjoy poking around the cameras and things and messing about. But when you take, for example, the David Attenborough narrated programs on the BBC, these camera crews go out to places like Mongolia and things, and they're searching for snow leopards, and they're out there for months. And I know they always kind of like gear it up like we think we're going to have to go home empty-handed, and at the last minute, we get a local person says they see one. They do that for the suspense and drama.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's very, very difficult because surely, and you can put me straight on this, Tina, since you're our expert, a large predatory cat, male or female, is going to have a very large territory. It's one cat.
It's going to have a large territory, but again, I guess that depends on its food source again.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I think at one
stage, but also the cats won't be together.
Yeah.
So it will be. The cats will live on their own, except for when they come together for mating
season.
Exactly.
But even when cats breed, big wild cats in the wild, you're not getting the countryside flooded with them. That's what I'm trying to say. Either they survive or they don't survive, being kittens, and they have very huge hunting areas. Their territory for one cat is very big.
Yes.
So And if that cat has a population, food source such as deer, rabbits, foxes, badgers, and everything that it can predate off of, then to see, you might, when you're driving down the road, you go, oh, look, there's a muntjac.
Yeah.
Oh, look, we had a badger run out in front of us the other day, didn't we, Zach? Mm-hmm. But how often does that happen? So, I haven't seen a badger on the road for a long time.
Yeah.
A live one, that is.
No.
Ouch.
Oh, didn't you have one? Didn't you?
Yes,
you run into one the other day?
Well,
no, I mean, as in it spotted you and thought, I'm running
I
away.
mean, literally, we were behind it in the car for about a quarter of a mile before it decided to get off the road. But the point is, we have a very healthy population of badgers, but I haven't seen a badger on the road for ages. So when you're talking about one singular cat in a large area,
well, might it also scavenge?
Well, that is another good point you bring up, because
there'd be plenty of food.
One study that I was looking into was a gentleman was tasked with going out in a certain demographic area to collect and weigh roadkill.
Okay.
And he estimated that there is, on average, because of cars, because of roadkill, about 300 kilograms of basically dead meat lying around on the roads at any one time in a specific area.
Wow.
So if you've got predators such as foxes, etc., badgers eat meat.
Easy food.
Birds of prey. Birds of prey, because we've got a flourishing population of kites, which are...
so there's a success story.
Is, what's the word I'm looking for? Kites are...
birds.
Yeah. Carrion feeders. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, they'll predate off of things that are dead, rather than hunt. Yeah. So they haven't got a diminished food supply. So if you've got a large cat that is roaming the countryside, a dinner is being provided by the traffic, and this cat is crepuscular, so it's basically hunting in the early hours, just before and just after dawn, and just before and just after sunset, which are times when it's human population out in the countryside. There's probably the least amount of traffic happening.
Yeah, low visibility as well.
Low visibility. They've got obviously superior visibility in the dark compared to human beings. It's going to be really hard to actually spot one of these things, isn't it? Yeah. So you can't,
considering these would be considered extremely rare encounters as well.
Yeah. So I actually put those factors, in my mind, puts it up the scale of the probability of having large cats roaming in Britain, because we're not expecting to have a huge population of these cats. They're going to be very elusive, but they're going to be sated on such an abundant food source anyway, aren't they? So because I've had people say to me, oh, surely if we had big cats in Britain, we'd be hearing of more human attacks and things.
Why?
And I actually think that's not the case, because if you get a well-fed predatory animal, it's going to shy away from humans.
Yeah, it knows where it gets food.
It's got absolutely no need to interact with humans at all. So it's more likely, unless you had some very, very odd happening where you had a small child in a field playing by itself at dawn or dusk, and then you had a large cat,
a very desperate cat
that thought, I haven't eaten well for a while. That's an easy target. That's the only way I would see that you might get that kind of interaction with humans. Yeah, what are your feelings on that, Tina?
Well, I suppose there's another thought is you could say there are hundreds of people go missing every year.
Are there?
Or just vanish. Yeah, just vanish.
Okay.
There was an account in the Beast of Exmoor about a young girl who was 12, who was talking to her friends just after doing a paper round, and one of the basically this little girl vanished and was never seen again. I'm not going to go into the details of that. I personally think it's very sceptical that it could have been a cat.
I don't think we've got too much time to delve deeply, because that in itself is quite a subject. You could do a podcast on the vanishing people.
Well, you could delve into all sorts of
because
ideas.
Surely you got people that if people have vanished, but they've vanished within towns or urban areas, it's one thing. But if you narrowed it down to people that have gone out specifically into the countryside and never to be seen again, that would be something to look into.
To a degree, that will become very speculatory.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, so saying in America, X amount of people go off into the forests on hunting trips or camping trips,
Mm.
never to be seen again,
Yeah.
what happens to them? The thing is, in America, unlike in comparison to the tiny British Isles, if you go out into America and you're out in the woods and what was the actor that went missing?
Julian Sands.
Yeah, Julian Sands. Eventually, I think they found his body, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
They did. But if you go out into the woods and if you make a mistake, for example, of not to letting anybody know your route plan,
Yeah.
not give anybody, you don't hear from me at this particular time, contact the authorities. People can easily go out into the forest in America and Canada.
Well, even in Europe, we've had a few people on holiday recently where they've gone missing, and it's taken a long time to find
them.
Exactly.
Now, if you've got somebody who goes missing in a vast area, the longer it takes to find them, then the more predatory animals, scavengers, are going to be scavenging that body to such a degree that it just vanishes. There is no trace left. I don't know so much in the UK whether that would be an option.
Well, if they've never found clothes or anything like that,
I think this...
to suggest anything. I think the facts are that wildcats, whatever wildcats, or feral cats for that matter, always stay away from humans. Yeah. I think an interesting thing is that so many years ago, I lost a cat at the vets. That's another story. And in my search to find him, which I did run into him a couple of weeks later and brought him home. And that's a story for another day. But in that journey of trying to find the cat, I came across a feral cat colony, which was near railway tracks.
Very good establishment.
Good established.
There used to be more and more of those back in the past. I think the RSPCA.
And you see, that's what's quite interesting. It is apparently quite commonplace for feral cat colonies to be, near railway tracks. Mm. But you see, also, when you think of some of these sightings they've had, so say, for example, the ones that the Commandos had, it was on disused railway track. Right. So you think disused railway track, it's, often quite remote away from everything.
That's a really good point, and probably a really good point kind of to round off this podcast with, because that's the thing, where people say they don't see them, we should see more of them. But if a large cat is using things such as railway sidings as a way of going to move around the countryside, and the fact that you do have a lot of big private, I'm sure big cats would take fish if they got the opportunity as well, and they need water, so they can stay near a water source, and of course the animals you predate on are going to stay near the water source. And there are a lot of private estates as well in the UK. So if you've got a big cat that has decided it's going to make its home on a private estate, you may know nothing about it. Even to say that private estate knows the cat's there because they used to own it.
Well, that's the thing. We're talking about all these different things, and so maybe in this podcast we have established that yes, there is the potential that there could be.
Let's do that as a
big cat.
Let's do that as a final question. Okay, so Tina, you're our specialist.
Yes.
Are there big cats in Britain?
I think there are.
Okay. What about you, Zach?
Now, I think I'm kind of on the fence with this. It's possibly. Am I allowed to give that answer?
Yeah, of course you can.
Possibly. There's the potential. There's all the potential.
You could be the Renee Holland of the round table.
It's more of a sofa chat. There's the potential that they could be out there. Okay. We just need to find them. Okay. That's what we need.
Okay. And myself, I definitely think there are. Okay. I think there are, but are they an established breeding big cat that self maintains its population, or are these just random exotic animals? Because although you've mentioned about the
they would have sunk or swam, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but you mentioned about the 1976 ban.
Yes.
But even today, exotic animals are still illegally brought into the UK. So, a wild cat can still, every 5 years, get too big and then let loose. And you never know.
There's all sorts of things.
I think, personally, so from my take on it, I think there are. Whether they're breeding or whether just exotic animals that are set free to roam. But I definitely think there are. our challenge is to see if we can actually get some solid
But
proof.
Exactly, on the
are-
Cryptid Adventurers, that would be absolutely fantastic if we could organise some form of expedition to go out into the countryside, into these places where these encounters have been reported to kind of have the best chance
Yeah, actually,
to search for these things.
I'll
That would be great.
I'll throw that out to the listeners and the viewers, that if you've got any, actual, experiences of your own, then please contact us and let us know, and maybe we can follow them up.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great.
That'd be great. So anyway, Tina,
I guess I love the idea that there could be. And I wouldn't like to see them harmed, especially if they've been around all this time.
But then it goes into that ideology of, if you do find something, do you then share that with the wider populace?
well, we had that
I think
talk
it's
about
like
Bigfoot,
local-
didn't we?
Exactly.
I think it-
That's where these two things
At the
like,
cryptid
I think
conference.
it's like
cross
local
over.
knowledge. If it, for example, I was driving in Oxfordshire not so long ago, and I did a double take. I first of all, I saw something in the field, and I thought, well, that's the hugest hare I've ever seen.
Oh, okay.
And then I looked again. I thought, hang on a second, that's no hare, that's a wallaby. And then I looked
yes.
around the field, and then I saw 3 more
Well,
wallabies.
no, that's
But now coming away from that, I did a little bit of research, and I've discovered that there are a number of wild wallaby populations that are established in the UK.
I've got to say that that if you talked about invasive species, they are certainly a thing in the UK. From, as you say, wallabies,
And they're very unusual.
through to parakeets. and all sorts.
Parakeets was another thing
so-
that I came
I would
across.
say if you said to somebody that you saw wallabies, then and they've got absolutely no idea, somebody could easily just turn around and say, yeah, no way.
It's a good example. That the wallaby thing is a good example of the two sides of the story. Yes, there are, and there's evidence, and there's proof. But then you say that to someone that you've seen a wallaby,
and they go, nah, you must have been mistaken.
yeah, exactly.
No
But
way.
it definitely was.
But then it comes to this idea of, if you're actively seeking out something, are you gonna, in fleeting glances going around, are you gonna trick your mind into actually believing that without the proof that it actually was?
What's the term for that?
Oh, I don't know. Inference.
Inference, yeah.
Yeah.
And then-
People are susceptible to inference.
Exactly. So, Tina, we always finish off with our weekly spot of
Wisdom of the week.
And it's Wisdom of the Week from Buzz again.
Bestow your
And
wisdom.
I've been trying to find some Wisdom of the Week, which would be feline.
Okay.
Ooh,
Feline
so,
meow.
so there we go. So my Wisdom of the Week is, the way to get on with a cat is to treat it as an equal. Or even better, as the superior it knows itself to be.
Oh dear
There
me.
you go. So if you do meet a big cat out in the wild, bear that in mind. Anyway, there you go. So big cats, are they out there? What do you think? Let us know.
Yes.
I think they are. And there we go. So that's a fantastic guest. Thank you, Tina, for coming into the studio this
I
week.
dare say you'll come back on the podcast,
Yeah.
discuss something
I mean,
similar in the future.
1 hour talking about this subject is just barely enough to even scratch the surface.
Exactly, but it's talking
Or
about
shall I
it.
say claw the surface?
Oh, there you go. There you go. Let's see what we did there.
Let's see what I did. So anyway, so there you go. Big cats. It's a fascinating subject, and I think they can be out there. There you go.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes. And please remember to buy us a coffee. It would be greatly
Would
appreciated.
you like a coffee, Tina?
Oh yes.
Maybe somebody out there will buy you a coffee.
It supports the channel. It helps us create content for you. Thumbs up. Please, please, please give us some
Yes.
support. That's a big prowling goodbye from Zach.
And that's I'm off to mark my territory. Goodbye from Buzz.
Ew.
Oh, I can scratch as well.
Okay.
Okay. And that's a meowy goodbye from Tina.
Goodbye. See you in the next one.